Welcome to the special meeting of the Parks and Recreation Commission. Thank you to staff for helping us rearrange our meeting at a time when more commissioners were available, or so that we can have a quorum for the meeting, as opposed to meeting on our normal fourth Tuesday of the month. And the first order is the roll call. Mom, could you please call roll?
Yes, Chair Greenfield.
Here.
Vice Chair Lemaire.
Here.
Commissioner Brown. Not present. Commissioner Cribbs
She's present, but not here.
will be present.
Will be present.
Commissioner Oche.
Present.
Commissioner Freeman.
Present.
Commissioner Kleinhaus.
Yes.
Verbally present, yes. Chair, that is 5 present, and Chair Cribbs will be joining us momentarily.
Thank you. If any members of the public would like to speak and haven't, to a topic that's not on our agenda tonight, and haven't filled out a speaker card already, please do so. And if there's anyone online who would like to speak, please raise your hand via Zoom. The next order is to adopt the resolution authorizing the use of teleconferencing for our Parks and Rec Commission meeting, again during COVID-19, the state of emergency, as we do every month. This is an action, and it's required to have the hybrid meeting. Could I get a motion to adopt this, please?
I move.
And a second.
I'll second.
Thank you. And Mom, could you please call roll? Call a vote on this, please.
Yes. This is a vote for the adoption authorizing a teleconference. Chair Greenfield,
Yes.
Vice Chair Lemaire,
Yes.
Commissioner Cribbs.
I'm
This is a-
sorry, are we voting or are we saying we're here?
We're voting on the teleconferencing.
Yes, thank you.
Commissioner Oche,
Yes, please.
Commissioner Freeman,
Yes.
Commissioner Kleinhaus.
Yes.
Chair, that's a 6-0 vote for those that are present.
Thank you. And Commissioner Cribbs is now present, as we can see.
Yes, Commissioner Cribbs has joined us.
Thank you. All right, now's the opportunity for public comment on an item not on the agenda. You have 3 minutes to speak. The first speaker will be Jeremy Dahl, followed by Patricia Smith.
Greetings, commissioners. Good evening. My name is Jeremy Dahl. I'm here in capacity as president of Stanford Soccer Club and also as a resident of Palo Alto. And I'm here with some colleagues as well. My comment is on the Mayfield Soccer Complex. As you may or may not have heard, the Mayfield North Field was closed
Excuse
down.
me, Jeremy, could you raise the microphone a little closer to you?
Apologies. I'm here to comment on Mayfield soccer fields, which were recently closed due to the infill clumping. And as we know, it's been a hazard to some of the players. However, we have organized together a group of volunteers that we were hoping to really keep the fields open despite the infill, but with the solution to assist the city in keeping that field clear of the infill that builds up. So our real interest is to keep that field open, keep the kids playing on the field. You know, the facilities that we have in Palo Alto are really fantastic. And so we would like to assist in keeping that clear to continue to use that field. Short of that, if the infill is too difficult to deal with simply due to the heat, we're hoping that there might be a consideration to, when the weather cools down, to reassess whether the Mayfield North could open, just to sort of, as I said, keep the kids able to play as much as possible. I think that's all I have. And thank you for your consideration.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Patricia Smith, to be followed by Mike Ensley.
Quick question, is there a speaker for someone wanting to speak on Zoom?
She needs to raise her hand
Okay, but, okay,
via Zoom.
I'm just wanting to know if AYSO is being represented also.
I don't know if we have someone raise their hand.
Okay. Hi, everyone. Start with saying public speaking is not my thing. My name is Patricia Smith. I'm the reason why I was asking about the AYSO is because I have been a long time soccer parent in Palo Alto both with AYSO and now with Palo Alto Soccer Club. And I just recently left the job of field permit coordinator at AYSO, a volunteer position. So I think that someone might be joining, but if not, I'm sort of speaking on behalf of both organizations and really just the soccer community. I've been volunteering for many years. I can't even count now. I have 3 soccer players. 2 of them are in college now, and they've been playing on Palo Alto field since they were preschoolers. And I've been a volunteer for all of their teams as managers, as field permit coordinator, as event coordinator. And I could tell you not only where every field is, but what size it is, whether it's grass or turf, if they have mosquitoes there, if there's a bathroom, if there's shade. So I know the fields really well. And I represent a lot of people who are in my same situation. So I echo everything that Jeremy said. But also want to talk a little bit more about the impact of the field closure and why it's such a big deal. I think the few of us here is not a good representation of how many people are impacted by this. It's not only just the soccer, the soccer club games, but it's also the adult league games, and it's shifting practices on a regular basis all over the place. Mayfield is also one of the few lighted fields, Mayfield North is. So it sort of sends a panic to all of us. Or what are we going to do soon when there isn't enough light? Because we can't just put everybody on grass fields. And for games, a lot of the grass fields are not in good enough condition to play games on them, or don't have the capacity. So it really is a big impact. We're talking about probably 40 high school age teams that are suddenly going to have to do something else in a hurry. So I think that is why there was a very, very quick and very willing grassroots effort to do what we can to maybe clean up the field, to get it to a condition that is safe for playing on, and help maintain it until we can repair it for long term. Or until maybe it's not as bad because the weather has cooled off, something along those lines. So I wanted to just emphasize the impact, and then also just ask the question, if there isn't a set plan in place, how can we work together and come up with a solution until we have a plan in place?
Thank you.
I'm out? Oh,
You're a bit over time.
I'm going over. Okay. All right. Thanks.
Thank you. The next speaker will be Mike Ensley. That will be our last speaker.
Hello, everybody. I'm just going to read this rather than try and think, because I don't think all that well. We will go back over some of the things you probably already heard. But basically, the deal is Mayfield North has been pretty much melting, and it's been quite a while that it's happened. It's not something new. We've noticed it. So the problem with that field is not in the stability of the field, but with these gunks and globs that are everywhere. You step on them, a player will step on them, and within 5 minutes, their cleats are completely full. And then they'll go over to clean it off and then throw it on the ground and somebody else will step on them. So the problem is these gunks that have already bled out of the field are getting recycled between the players and all that. And since it's been going on for so long, it's a big problem to start with to get it cleaned up. I know the city has had a couple of workers out there for a few hours every week, but they can't catch up to the problem. Our solution is this weekend, we have up to 50 volunteers ready, willing, wanting to go out there and not do anything to the fields that will hurt it, but just pick up those globs like a pooper scooper type thing, just rake them up, put them in bags and get them out of there. And once those globs are gone, they will never get into somebody else's shoes. Of course, the process continues and there will be more future globs. But as Jeremy said, we have practices out there almost every day of the week, and we have games during the week, and we have a lot of people in our community, people that come to watch the games, that come to pick up their kids at practice, and they are willing to do a little work while they're waiting. So we can, once we get the initial stuff off the field, which as I said, we can do this weekend, then we can maintain them and keep them that way. As the field keeps bleeding, at some point it might become unstable, but it's nowhere near that way. I was out there this weekend and I did some of both, cleaning up the field and watching the soccer. The fields are fine, it's just the globs. So we're just asking to give us a chance. I know there's already the fence out there and it's, you know, once you make a decision, it's hard to go back, but we're enlisting you to maybe ask the people that make those decisions and to do it quickly tomorrow so we can tell our people, yes, we're going to do this thing. And we believe that we can fix the thing. We're soccer people. We know how fields go. We can do it. You have said that it's okay for us to clean up Mayfield South and El Camino. We're planning to do that anyway, but we really hope that tomorrow you can light a fire over somebody just to give us a chance. And like this grassroots effort, it should be a wonderful thing. I don't expect a fence to come up and we say we want to come help, and we can help. It's just pooper scooper, sweeping up and all that. The other thing that needs to be done is have more garbage cans out there, probably on the other side of the fields where the players are. So as ongoing stuff happens, they have somewhere to put the mess off their feet.
Thank you.
Instead of just throwing it back on the floor. And we'll buy those.
Thank you. Appreciate the members of the public coming out to speak during public comments. Please understand that the staff and commissioners don't respond directly to the public comments. But we appreciate you making the effort to come out and have your voice heard. Next up on the agenda is agenda changes, additions and deletions. And there has been a request this evening to change the order to move the utilities department updates earlier. So I'm going to swap items 5 and 6. I know that we did not get to funding opportunities last week or last month, but we will certainly get to it even in the later order this evening. This is to accommodate a staff request. Are there any other suggestions regarding changes, additions, or deletions? Okay, then we'll have that swap in place, and then we will move on now to the approval of minutes from the July 28th, 2022 Parks and Rec Commission meeting. Do any commissioners have any comments regarding the minutes?
Chair?
Yeah.
I just have one suggestion for the minutes. Are we doing that now?
Yes, please.
Okay. On page 10, line 23, it reads service. It should be serve as, because it sounds like the parks, Friends of the Parks are going to take care of the fundraising. It just should say service, serve as. You see that? And that's the extent of my comment tonight.
Thank you. Any comments from anyone else? Joy?
Yes, please. I appreciate the work that goes into preparing the minutes. I saw still a lot of errors. And I was just wondering if there's any update with regards to the new vendor you mentioned at the last meeting.
Yeah, they're not in place yet. This is still the old vendor with a little extra effort from staff to try to catch those errors, and clearly we're still missing some. Apologies.
Thank you. Any other updates before I get to mine? Okay, page 3, line 21, change infield to infill. This is related to some comments we've just heard. Infield to infill. Yes, as in bad infill material at Mayfield. Page 4, line 29, I think you change if there is someone to, it needs to get reworded a bit to clarify the meaning, what's going on there. The words just don't make sense. And I can help you with some details afterwards. On page 4, line 38, just cross out phonetic. That's a place where the current person doing the minutes is putting notes in. And so it's something that we could search for in any place you see phonetic, check it and make sure it and get rid of it. On page 6, line 6, between the word soccer and replacement, add the word field. On page 10, line 13, between this is and challenge, add a. So this is a challenge. Page 17, line 2, change and to in. And line 3, change have great skate parks to has a great skate park. It's referring to Burgess. Currently, it's referring to Burgess and Menlo Park as separate places that have skate parks as opposed to Burgess Park in Menlo Park. That's all I have. If there's no further suggestions, would you like to get a motion to approve the minutes?
Make a motion to approve the minutes.
Ann? Thank you. In a second.
I'll second.
Thank you. You call roll, please, Ron? Ron?
Yes, this is for approval of the minutes. Chair Greenfield,
Yes.
Vice Chair Lemare,
Yes.
Commissioner Cribbs,
Yes.
Commissioner Oche,
Yes, please.
Commissioner Freeman,
Yes.
and Commissioner Kleinhaus.
Yes.
Chair, that's a 6-0 vote of those present.
Thank you. We'll now move on to the department report.
Evening, Chair and Commissioners. Darren Anderson with Community Services Department. Before I start, Lom, I just want to double check that you got the message. Our presenter for the utilities, her link is not working. Could you send her another one, please?
Yes, I will. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, I'll start with some recruitment updates. We were able to fill our vacant park maintenance position. I'm excited to have that person on board. We're still recruiting for the vacant parks irrigation position. Still working on recruitment for the senior management analyst. We did fill our vacant program assistant positions. So that's a step in the right direction. There were 3 of them. We're in the interview process for a CSD manager at Cumberland, working on filling that. Some exciting news. We are also in the process of recruiting for a new park ranger. So this is a new position that was approved by council last June. And the challenge is that this position, like all the new positions approved in that budget, are only funded for 2 years. So that's through June 30th, 2024. And that 2-year funding limit was applied to all the new positions. And the time limit is primarily based on the city's financial resources. There'll be a reevaluation as we get closer to that date to see if there's a possibility of extending them. Unfortunately, I also got news recently that one of our existing rangers is leaving for another job. So we have to recruit for that position too. Brief update on Coverly Gyms A and B. Public Works staff will begin the bid process for hazardous materials remediation, which will include mold, asbestos, lead paint remediation, removal and disposal of the gym floors, removal of damaged wall sections, and removal of piping systems in the water damaged areas of the gyms only. A claim will be submitted to the city's insurance carrier for site remediation and any subsequent restoration and repair work. Staff's working to share an update on the immediate longer-term closure of gyms A and B with past renters and tenants, some of whom were relocated to other city facilities. And this was shared with City Council on August 16th. I can see how this would generate a lot of additional questions, about Coverly. Unfortunately, this is all the information I have at this time. As soon as I get more, I'll be sure to share it with the commission, perhaps via email in advance of our next meeting if I'm able to get it. Staff held a community meeting on the Coverly Field restroom project on Wednesday, August 17th. We had 2 commissioners, 1 council member, and 1 member of the public. The 1 member of the public was very supportive of the restroom project, but due to that limited turnout of participants, Public Works is putting together a survey to get additional feedback. In particular, we'd like to hear from the neighbors on Nelson Drive. That's really close proximity to the proposed location for that new restroom. So more information to come. The survey is being developed right now, and as soon as it's ready, it will be sent to all the commissioners as well. This year's Moonlight Run will be held on Friday, September 9th at 6 to 10 p.m. Update on the infill at the Mayfield Soccer Complex. You had received an email from staff on Wednesday informing you about the closure of the North Field on the Mayfield Soccer Complex due to the deterioration of the synthetic turf infill. Fencing was installed today, closing that North Field. South Field remains open, though staff will closely monitor it. And if there are reports of increased clumping of the infill material, staff may have to close that. The North Field closure will be in effect for at least several weeks as the city team works to secure a vendor to remove the deteriorated infill and install new infill at both the North and South Fields. Staff's exploring all options to expedite an installation process. And we do understand the impacts of closing this turf field in the middle of the fall season. It's incredibly unfortunate. The safety of their users is our top priority, and that's the rationale for why. City staff have been raking the fields and using sweeper machines to remove the clumped infill. However, due to that level of deterioration on the infill in the North Field, it needed to be closed. If there are additional grass spaces that can be used or other options available, staff will work to support any innovative ideas that can allow for space. Although the recreation staff acknowledged there isn't a lot of other options, and there are people being displaced because of that closure. Many of the field users started to organize to work parties to clean up the infill at Mayfield. Staff sent an email this morning notifying them that we welcome their assistance and efforts on the South Field, but that the North Field for now will have to remain closed. Staff purchased 20 rakes and are making the rakes available for them who'd like to use it. We are asking folks to use the plastic tined rakes rather than the metal to avoid damaging the grass blades. The Magical Bridge Playground is closed from today through October 14th for renovations. That will include new rubberized surfacing, synthetic turf replacement, cleaning and restaining of the playhouse railing replacement of the net on the net spinner, addition of a shade structure over the spin zone, play equipment, and miscellaneous painting and planting improvements. Mid-Peninsula Regional Open Space District is hosting 2 public open houses as part of their ongoing public engagement efforts on the Hawthorns area plan. There's an in-person open house on September 29th from 6 to 8 p.m. and a virtual open house on Thursday, October 20th from 6 to 8. If you're unable to attend either of those events, you can consider sharing your thoughts regarding the Hawthorne area through an online survey, and that was emailed to the commissioners. There's a red algae bloom right now in San Francisco Bay, and it's killing hundreds of fish since the last week or so. And in the last week in our Palo Alto Baylands, there's been 3 dead fish that have popped up. The rangers have found. San Francisco Bay Regional Water Board says they don't know how long this red algae bloom is going to last. They're studying it. They're monitoring it on a regular basis. They suspect it will probably last a couple more weeks due to the warm weather. There's also an influx of highly pathogenic avian influenza, or HPAI, in California. And we've seen an influx of sick or dead water birds here in Palo Alto recently. In the last 2 weeks, there's a report of 11 birds suspected to have HPAI. Some were still alive at impound and showed clear signs of the disease. The rangers and the animal services staff are keeping an eye out for this and reporting findings to Fish and Wildlife Service. And Chair, that concludes the department report.
Thank you, Darren. Do any commissioners have questions regarding the department report? Yes, Jeff.
Yeah, Darren, in regards to Magical Bridge, is that service on, is that like a regular scheduled service that we had? And is it paid for out of the Parks and Recreation Fund, or is it paid for, does Magical Bridge have a fund that they use for maintenance? How is that done?
It's a capital improvement project. So it's funded out of the City General Fund, with the exception of a contribution from the Magical Bridge Foundation for the shade structure.
But this was not a regular scheduled maintenance, is that correct? Or is that something?
Well, regular scheduled maintenance, I usually don't lump into capital improvement projects. So that's sort of, in my mind, that's routine stuff. If the question is, was this earlier than expected? Yes, it was. So because of the heavy use at that playground, the surfacing, for example, aged prematurely, wore out really quickly. There are other factors at play aside from just heavy use. There are adjacent trees, which of course we wanted so it would shade part of the playground, but those tree roots lift up and damage some of the pour and play surfacing. But yeah, in general, it's probably a little bit early for almost all the repairs. You'd ideally like to get a little bit more use, but given the heavy play that it experiences, it's not to be too unexpected.
Thank you.
Others?
You mentioned the HPAI. Are we able to share the tracking information with residents?
I think we'd probably have to, we don't have that information. We're not tracking it other than, small numbers, but it's really passing it on to the bigger regulatory agencies like Fish and Wildlife, the Water Board, where they're tracking and monitoring over the whole bay. And in some places, like the birds, it's across California.
When was the plastic turf installed?
What side are we talking about?
The Mayview, when was it installed, the plastic that is now degrading?
Yeah, the infill, maybe this is not long. Could you mention what year? And while you're pulling that up, the infill is not degrading through age. It's degrading because it wasn't properly spec'd for this climate. Ideally, we would have had one that's rated for a hotter temperature. And it was a mistake and we're suffering the consequences. The same thing happened at El Camino Park, and we swapped it out with the weather appropriate infill.
The Mayfield, both those fields were installed at the same time in 2016.
When?
2016.
And that's 10 years after the fields originally opened in 2006.
That's correct, Chair Greenfield. That is the second set of artificial turf fields that on that site. The site opened if it's 2006, if that's a correct date, then that was the first set of artificial turf field. And then a new installation, which is the one I was referring to in 2016, that is the current material that is on the field right now, installed in 2016.
So in terms of maintenance and need for upgrades, how does that compare to regular turf, like living turf?
Yeah, from grass to synthetic turf, what's the difference in maintenance? It's sort of a long conversation, but I can give you the general gist of it. The big savings in water costs and the amount of water that you put down for natural grass versus synthetic, of course, it's really, really significant. Depending on the infill you've got, there are some kinds of infill that do require irrigation, either to cool it or keep it in place. Some of it's so light, it could float or blow away, so it has to be irrigated, which is a little unusual and not the case for ours. And then, of course, you don't have to fertilize, but the initial costs are much, much higher where you have to build a base. You've got to buy the turf and set it down. You've got to have the infill, and then it lasts somewhere between 8 to 10 years. And then you've got to change out the infill and the grass carpet go.
So I'm not suggesting that we do anything right away, but can you use recycled water and irrigate regular turf instead of plastic, which is contamination throughout the life cycle of the materials?
You can irrigate with recycled water. We do so at Greer and at the Baylands Athletic Center, both natural grass fields that are irrigated with recycled.
So when there is huge investment, would you consider an alternative? I mean, I don't know. I'm just saying, you don't have to answer right now.
Yeah. One other important factor is the amount of play that you can put on a synthetic turf field versus a natural grass. It just handles so much more use before, like a natural grass field would wear out. You'd have bare spots everywhere with a quarter of the use that you could put on a synthetic turf field, especially a lit synthetic turf field. So that's another factor. But yeah, I think it bears consideration on all of them. When you're looking at those droughts, the initial costs, the long-term costs, the impacts to the environment, all those things bear.
I would add that
reflection.
particularly for fields that are lighted, they're going to have extended hours of use. Grass it really doesn't work for the big quality of the fields can't be maintained sufficiently.
As somebody who played on dirt when I was a kid, I'm sorry, it seems like, there's a lot of options that we have not explored, but never mind.
While we're talking about the Mayfield soccer field, I'm also a soccer mom, so I echo what you said, Patricia. And my son comes home with very messed up soccer cleats, and I don't want it in the living room or anywhere near the living room. I want it outside the house. So I'm just wondering if we can clarify the message to the volunteers. I'm not too sure if I caught that in what you said during the reports. Are we saying they can't, go to the north side and try to clean up?
That's correct.
Oh.
Right now, the north side is fenced off.
Okay, I have a feeling that they're waiting to hear more. I may
If the
be
question
wrong,
is
but,
why aren't we?
I feel like they might want more, concrete action steps while they wait for. I'm just wondering what we could do in the meantime.
In the meantime, we're trying to expedite replacement of the infill. I think the speakers had some good points, though. Are there other options? When it cools, does that change? I'm absolutely willing to look at that and investigate it and look at different options. But for right now, I can say the north field's closed. But staff is definitely interested in exploring options to find ways to open it, whether that's replacing it or, finding a maintenance routine if it's cooler that would work and would be safe. I think that's something that you could certainly look at, but right now we need to keep it closed.
Let me ask a question. What the decision was made today to close it tomorrow? Is that a decision that has been sort of ongoing? Is there a reason why it has to be immediate versus sort of a gradual process? Is it that, I guess, dramatic right now that you absolutely have to close it? And I think you were talking about, whether it's the potential safety issues, I think that you kind of alluded to as well.
That is exactly the reason. The feeling that safety was too much risk and too much liability that someone would get hurt. And so it had to be closed for that reason.
So an aggressive cleanup, you don't think would, I guess, delay the issue until, I guess, the weather changes or whatever?
If I understood you right, would an aggressive cleanup solve it? No. In my experience, when our staff came out and spent multiple hours cleaning a field, the very next day there's clumps everywhere. And what it tells me is as soon as you get the clumps off, the next soccer cleat that's on hot gummy infill, in particular on the north field. So whether it was the clump or not, if you dig your fingers down and grab the infill from the base, it's like gum. And so the next cleat that comes gets a wad gradually, not instantly. If you don't step on a patty, it's not gonna be instant, but over time they do. And that's a risk and concern that you lose traction. You don't have, your cleats basically don't work because you're filled with infill.
So do you know if there's been any injuries as a result of the field being in the condition it's in now?
I could say that we got a report from someone saying that there was a non-contact injury on the north field.
Yeah, I'm just wondering why it has to be like, we make a decision today to close tomorrow,
Yeah.
when, I mean, it seems to be a little bit, I guess, taking a drastic action without maybe a lot of investigation, but, well, so I don't know,
Yeah.
was there a lot of investigation?
Well, I could tell you, we've been ramping up our efforts to clean off the infill, right? So we started with more marginal efforts, and then as that was not bearing fruit, almost immediately with refill, we ramped it up again. So we've emptied out 5 dumpsters of infill, largely from the north field. That's an incredible amount of infill. And again, as you put your hand into the turf, it's not like, well, that's it. What's underneath is fine. It's not fine. It's broken down too from the heat and the UV light.
So maybe another way to ask the same question is trying to clarify what the criteria is for closing the field and what the criteria would be for reopening the field.
Yeah, I don't know that I've got like a clump per square foot ratio or anything I can give you like that right now. I think it'd be a combination of discussing it with the leagues, having staff go out there and walk it. Continued conversations with our risk management team and our city attorney's office like we did before this decision was made.
So we don't have a time frame for when the field will reopen.
We don't yet.
And so the immediate action is the immediate action working to clean up the existing gunk out of the infield so it's playable before the field can be properly have the infill replaced, or is the thought that we will need to keep the field closed until the contractor process is identified to hire a contractor to replace the infill altogether, or potentially even redo the fields completely?
Yeah,
Which
I can tell you we're having conversations with vendors to get, we got the one bid. We put this out to bid, only one bidder responded. The price that they came back at was 4 to 5 times the original estimate. We're in conversations with some other vendors, informal conversations to get different perspectives on what's possible, what timeframes they could do it, what equipment's necessary. So it's still sort of evolving. I hope to have more information very soon to share with this commission, with our stakeholders, with the field users, the community abroad.
So that was my next question. So the status of the RFI, it's in process right now. You're receiving feedback from the RFI?
Not from the RFI. We are just calling vendors directly and saying, this is our situation. What's your opinion on this? What's your perspective?
And so is the RFI still proceeding, or is that stalled out, or is that?
Yet to be determined on the value of it, if it's going to bear additional fruit. We've already made contact with 2 or 3 vendors so far with informal calls that may serve the same purpose and get us to where we need to do. Basically, I want to do whatever I can to expedite this, whatever is the fastest route.
So it's staff's belief that essentially extensive effort would be required every day at Mayfield to clean up the gunk in order to be able to play safely on the field.
No.
And I understand that this safety is a top priority and with that liability for the city. And if people are getting injured out there, it's a concern. And this is the concern that we've been voicing for quite some time. And it's unfortunate that it's taken some injuries to seemingly increase the priority level on this. We're getting action moving. at a faster rate. And I understand it's a complicated problem, then we don't have, it's complicated and that we don't have the answers. There's not a clear path to address the problem. So I'm just trying to understand what the process is, and to have an idea is, are you expecting that the fields will need to be upgraded, the infield will need to be replaced before Mayfield North is reopened?
I believe that will be the case. That's the current understanding, although I wouldn't say that's the only option. I'm certainly open to seeing what happens when the weather cools, if there's other options, but that's our recommendation at this point and plan in place so far.
And we have no guarantee that's going to happen this year.
Pardon?
And we have no guarantee that will happen this calendar year.
I don't know though exactly when. As soon as I do, I will let you know, but I don't have a guarantee for when it will happen.
And so we'll need to identify, once it's understood what work needs to be done and what's likely to cost, we'll need to go to council for funding.
It will require council approval if it's above a certain threshold, contract costs.
I'll just comment that I was out at Mayfield North last night, refereeing the last game that will be played there at 8:30 for quite some time, and it's the conditions are not good, but people were getting through it. It's unfortunate that we're where we are with all of this. Any further questions for anybody?
Yes.
Yes.
Just a comment. I mean, I know everybody sitting up here is very concerned about this timing and it happening now, and especially about the kids and obviously the adult teams who play and everything. Soccer is really important to this community. And it just feels like we need to just go in, take the field out and put a new field in as soon as possible.
And do we have it? Do we know how much that would cost? That was a question I asked last month.
Yeah, it's sort of a loaded question on full replacement, exactly what that cost. I don't know. The market has changed significantly. Bids that are regularly coming in 2 to 3 times what we originally estimated. So I hate to even put a guess on what that's at now.
Darren, can you say what they're coming in at around, is it around 400,000 a field?
Well, what we've
Without
gotten
the
bids on most
preparation.
recently isn't for replacement. It's replacement of the infill, not the whole turf.
Okay, but what if you had to do the whole thing? Because
We would have to ask what the latest is.
But I think that's an important question to be asking, and it should be more straightforward process. It's sort of like a tear down and rebuild for a house rather than a remodel where you're opening up walls and you don't know what you're going to find.
Yeah, I mean, I could give you a blanket estimate, but I don't trust it. I don't think it's going to hold true. And as soon as you put it out there, it's going to be proven false and maybe grossly false. There's also other criteria like the base. If you're going to replace that field, it's probably base work that needs to be done. That's the base rock underneath it. Regraded, additional rock added, that kind of thing, given its age. That's to ensure that you don't get lumps and dips and other grading problems later on. So yeah, there's just more to it than just giving you the baseline cost of a typical field.
Because as we mentioned, we know the same infill was used at El Camino Park and it was replaced, and there are still problems there. So even if we go to all this effort to make this replacement, it's not going to be a perfect solution.
That's right.
But I think it would be helpful to get a number on complete field replacement as soon as possible, and then certainly it's going to be a big number. It's going to be eye popping for many, but we have community resources, and
I'm wondering too, Darren, is this out of Public Works or is it out of Parks and Recreation?
The funds would be from the city general fund.
No, I'm not talking about the money. I'm talking about who's actually managing the project or who will manage it. Is it a building project or is it
It would probably be both Public Works and CSD working together.
okay? And, we live right in the middle of a hotbed of soccer and facilities and all of that. And I'm hopeful that everybody can take advantage of all the resources at Stanford and other, all up and down the peninsula and stuff.
Take advantage of the resources.
Take advantage
in
of
what
the
way?
resources, the knowledge, and also the experience. Not that you guys don't have the experience, that's not what I'm saying at all. I'm
Right.
just saying that this is a really big, important project and it needs to get done really fast. And there's probably people who have additional expertise that we could put to work getting it done.
Yeah, well, I would welcome it and absolutely, we're definitely open for checking with neighbors to see if there's better ways.
And I can talk to you offline, but if you need some contacts.
Sure.
and all of that, I don't know who you're using, but so.
Chair, if I may assist in responding to the cost inquiry, assist you and Darren in that answer. This would be a response, not necessarily an answer of cost, but in the casual discussions that have occurred with turf installers, and Darren's correct. This is a number that we wouldn't hang a hat on, but for discussion purposes, it's been anywhere approximately $5 a square foot to $7 a square foot. And looking at a field that is over 150,000 square foot, that could range anywhere from 750 to $1,050,000. However, Darren brings up a very good point. Pricing is not anywhere near the map once we get bids. And secondly, that is cost does not take into, that's a square foot cost that does not take into account what Darren brings up, which is the base. In the fields there, this would be the next replacement would be a third life cycle of fields on that. And so the base doesn't repair. And there's also a Brock pad, which is a cushioning pad that's underneath the artificial turf as well. And that would need to be replaced because it would be on its third life cycle, and it's good for 2 life cycles and not 3. So those costs we don't know.
Yep, we'll call it 2.5 and not third. We didn't get through 2 altogether.
Okay,
So a ballpark number is we're probably talking about $2 to $3 million.
You know, with
To
factoring
replace,
multiple factors coming.
I mean,
Yes,
that's a ballpark, the first stab.
and I would say that's back of the napkin. I wouldn't say that that's anything that's something that we could hang a hat on. That's more back of the napkin.
All right, start working, Ann. All right, any other comments? All right, we've blown our schedule a bit on this item. Thank you, and let's now move on to our first business item, the skate park recommendation to the Parks and Recreation Commission. Darren.
Can you see my screen? Yep. Great. Again, I'm Darren Anderson with Community Services Department. We're here for an action item this evening, asking for your recommendation to council regarding a new skate park. Just a reminder, it was April 12th, 2021, City Council directed the Parks and Recreation Commission to evaluate the need for a new skate park, identify the suitable location, and prioritize skate park within the Parks, Trails, Natural Open Space, and Recreation Master Plan. The recommendation that was in the staff report, I have a slight modification, and that is recommending that we clarify those 3 points that the ad hoc committee had come to agreement of. And during our conversation last week, there was a lot of general entertaining of that idea being good, but it needs to probably be part of our recommendation. So this is a draft one for your consideration of changing to clarify that Parks and Recreation Commission recommends that council adopt these findings. And we can revisit that. But just a reminder of the existing skate park, where it's at Greer, its current shape. This one was built, excuse me, in 1990. We've talked about it quite a bit in our last meeting, so I won't go over too much of that. And just to re-highlight just a little bit of the ad hoc and our stakeholders group's assessment of evaluating the need. They all came to the conclusion that as the stakeholders, staff, and the ad hoc committee, that a new inclusive skate park would be a valuable asset to our community. And it would benefit both children and adults who are interested in skateboarding. And also noting that our existing bowl is the only skate park in Palo Alto. And while it remains popular with skaters, the sport of skateboarding has grown and changed in ways that new styles of skate parks are needed.
And it also mentioned again that we had a petition, grassroots led by a student that got 2,000 signatures saying we need a new skate park in this area. The suitable location, ad hoc and staff, and again, that stakeholder group analyzed Palo Alto's parks and our city-owned lands to find suitable locations. Some of the key features we were looking for was at least 12,000, 15,000 square feet, minimize impacts to neighbors, available restroom access, adequate parking, safe biking access, and avoiding displacing other park uses and trying to target underutilized areas. And again, we looked at a number of different options, but ultimately it was the area adjacent to the existing bowl at Greer that was the preferred location. This graphic shows that preferred location, and it's the dotted lines around the existing skate park. It's got a lot of the desired features. Space adjacent to the existing bowl doesn't impact other park uses. And again, Greer has a restroom, a parking lot, and good bicycle access. A few other details. This location doesn't mean that we'd have to change or alter the existing skate park. In fact, one of the main things we heard from our outreach was, please don't change the existing skate park. We love it just the way it is. And in working with the stakeholders, they said we could work right around that, have a new skate park that integrates very well with this. And that was also confirmed by the son of the original designer. When we asked him, he's in the business of skate park design, and we asked, do you think this could be complementary? Do you think this could work? And the answer was yes. The nice part is the expanded fence line. This is an envelope of where it could go, and we could position that fence line so it does not interfere with the adjacent soccer fields. Again, we held a community meeting on June 15th to get feedback on the concept and the location. 21 people attended and participated in the meeting. There was broad support for the concept and location and the process. And again, reiterating the appreciation of the existing bowl. The question of prioritizing a skate park within the Parks Trails Natural Open Space and Recreation Master Plan. Again, the ad hoc had voiced and acknowledged that there are numerous important projects, very important programs within the Parks Master Plan, and they require staff resources and funding to achieve them. But given the high level of community interest in having a new skate park, the growth of skateboarding in general, and the benefits and well-being to youth, the ad hoc committee believes that a new skate park is one of the highest priorities of the projects inside the Parks Master Plan. The ad hoc noted that the funding for the new skate park is proposed to come from community donations and fundraising, which means that the skate park wouldn't be in competition with other projects that are funded through the city's general fund. I also note that the Friends of Palo Alto Parks have agreed to serve as the fundraising organization for a new skate park. And the fundraising could begin if City Council gives approval to move forward with that project. Some of the feedback we got in our July 28th Parks and Recreation Commission meeting, both comments and questions. Commission asked to ensure that Greer Park field users had been notified and informed about the proposed location of the skate park. Staff did reach out to all the regular Greer Park field users, as well as city staff who sometimes program that area, in advance of that community meeting and after our July PRC meeting. We didn't receive any questions or concerns from the field users. There was a question about what trees are located in that proposed area. City arborists surveyed that for us and came back with 4 Chinese pistache trees, 1 Patmore ash, and 2 volunteer privet trees. They're all non-native trees. And there was a question about the impacts to parking, given that the peak times for the skate park are likely to coincide with the peak times for weekday after school sports practice and weekend sports games. Planning staff explained to me that the impacts related to transportation and trees would be assessed in accordance with CEQA, as well as consistency with council priorities, council policies, comprehensive plan goals and policies, and city regulations once a conceptual plan was proposed. And there was a question when CEQA would happen. CEQA would be done once the proposed design, conceptual design is available to adequately assess the impacts of the proposed project. The next steps would be, pending the evaluation and recommendation from this body, council review in October, and again, fundraising could begin at that time. And Chair, that concludes the staff presentation.
Thank you, Darren. Would members of the ad hoc like to speak first to this item? Commissioner
Yeah, I was
Krebs?
interested in the, thank you. I was interested in the timeline. Were we able to move it up to September? To go to council, assuming that we send it on tonight?
It's unlikely. I think it would probably be October, but I could try. I can shoot for the earliest I can, and I'm glad to work on it right away.
Thank you. You know, Sam and the stakeholder group are all back. Some of them are back in school and they're anxious to get going. So
Yeah.
Is that all?
that's all.
Thank you.
Except for the fact that I'm totally in support of this project and I want to see it get done as soon as possible.
Thank you. Commissioner Oche.
Sorry, Darren, you mentioned the field users were informed. I'm just wondering how they were informed.
Yeah, our recreation staff reached out to them via email, and he gave me a list of the groups. It was AYSO, Palo Alto Soccer Club, AAYSA, Palo Alto Soccer, PSV Union, Stanford Soccer Club. So I believe it was via email. There was also signs at the park itself.
Vice Chair. Darren, thank you for your work with this and pushing this project forward. I'm in full support of this. I do think it's important that we continue to note Sam Kaplitsky's involvement in this in terms of it's a wonderful example of our youth being able to take action within our city and feel like they have agency. And I think it's an amazing example of that. And I think anything that we can do to continue to highlight Sam's involvement and how it all began. And I just think that any way that we encourage youth engagement within our city and especially within our public policy is wonderful. So I am in full support of this and excited to see this get going as soon as we can.
Thank you. And as you mentioned that, I realized we forgot to look to see if there were any members of the public who wanted to speak on this item. I don't see any hands raised, but if there are any members of the public online that would like to speak, raise your hand now, please, and we'll give you an opportunity. Okay, we'll proceed instead. Ellis?
Great. I totally support this project as well. And I agree that we definitely should keep the involvement of youth and keep, especially keep putting Sam's name out there. I do have, we had mentioned, I think, in the need to keep everyone agree that we want to keep the existing skate park. If I remember, it's going to be the new park, and the design will incorporate the existing park into that design, correct?
Yes.
Which means that doing the build out of the park, that means the park won't be available for.
That's right. Peter Jensen said that there may be possibilities depending on how it's phased, but if it were to happen as one project, it's very likely that the existing skate bowl would have to be closed during construction.
Yeah, and I fully support trying to get this in front of the council as quickly as possible, so we can keep the momentum going. That's it.
Commissioner Planhouse?
Good to see you getting involved in moving a project like this forward. Thank you.
Thank you. Darren, I have a question about parking, and I think we can all understand that parking needs will increase as a result of this project, and we know that parking is already an issue at peak use times at Griff Park on after school and on weekends. And it seems fairly unlikely that the city would be adding any parking for any project at any park. We had this discussion at Mitchell Park regarding Magical Bridge and pickleball and things. I think it's kind of unfortunate that there's no assessment of parking at all until a CEQA analysis is done after a project, a sketch of the project proposals is put in place. It seems a bit difficult to me to recommend this site, knowing that there's going to be a parking issue without really understanding what the magnitude of the parking issue would be and how significant this would be. It seems almost at least a bit irresponsible to not consider the parking consideration. We should be able to estimate within a high error factor what the number of increased cars would be and have some understanding, is this feasible, so we can move forward and recommend to city council that they move forward with this. And it seems like a consideration that would be important to them as well.
Yeah, thank you for that question, Chair. I did take stock to our planning staff about this specifically, and their response was, we analyze stuff when we've got a conceptual plan so we can understand exactly what we're talking about. In the absence of plan, it's really difficult to do analysis like that. However, I also spoke to her about other options, and she said that one thing we could consider is adding to the recommendation that fundraising dollars be earmarked to conducting parking analysis to identify peak times and potential conflicts with other use and whether there's a need for additional parking. She said to me that the planning rough estimate for this, if we were to hire a consultant, was somewhere between 8,000 to 10,000 to have a consultant look at it and give an estimate. So we could add that to the recommendation if that was something the commission is interested in doing, to help say that we wouldn't get too far along with conceptual design without doing some analysis to say, here's our perspective on what would happen with parking. It's not something CSD staff could do. It would be something we'd have to hire a consultant to do.
So city council would authorize fundraising, authorize the staff to begin working on a conceptual design of the project with the heavy lifting being done by outside parties. And that would be based on the fundraising that the outside parties would be doing for the project. And some of the fundraising would be earmarked for a traffic analysis, parking analysis, in addition to creating the conceptual design.
Yeah, I might argue it would perhaps make sense to do it very early in the design process so that you know right away, is this the kind of thing the analysis says more parking is needed, or are we at, it wouldn't be an impact. I think before you got too far along, yeah, I don't know exactly. In my mind, it would walk together a little bit because you have to have some plans to understand a little bit on what kind of use you're going to get.
And is there any precedent for this type of a
I think we're sort of in the unique one, given the council direction we got, which was to find a suitable location, but we're not funding the project. We don't have a design, right? That's intended to be done by the group, fundraised by the group, not by city staff at this point. So it is unique from my perspective and experience. I haven't had one quite like this.
I'm wondering what other commissioners think about this idea.
Chair, I just had a question about how you would analyze the need for parking before you had a design to know how many people really could be accommodated at one particular time at the skate park.
So my thought is that estimate a certain number of cars based on a certain size of a skate park. Come up with a rough estimate, just a number to look at and look at things in ballpark, in broad strokes. Commissioner Freeman.
And there are other skate parks, and I'm sure that I think that there's sometimes there are events that happen. And I guess the fear would be with a soccer tournament, a skate park event going on and another event, trying to analyze, and if this is going to be it is going to be a brand new park, you're probably going to get a lot of people coming in from a lot of different areas for a period of time.
Yeah.
And so parking could become an issue that becomes a sort of an eyesore for the neighborhood. So it is something that probably needs to be, thought through.
Yeah.
And added as part of the design. And maybe that's reaching out to some of the other communities and seeing what are some of those types of events that take place at the skate parks and how many people actually end up coming into those.
I don't want to stop this recommendation from going through, but it does seem like something worth considering. Do we have any kind of feel how the stakeholders would feel about adding the recommendation to do some sort of a parking assessment?
Are there ever any problems with parking in that area now?
On busy weekends with big tournaments, I think the parking lot can fill quickly. I haven't done an analysis to see how side streets are impacted. I just haven't done it, so I couldn't speak with authority or expertise on it. And hence, maybe that's why we would have an analysis done.
Vice Chair, do you have any thoughts on this? Is this something you would support?
My thoughts are I'd like to see this approved as is. I feel that we will have opportunity to assess the needs as it goes forward, as it comes back to us, as it works its way through city staff. And so I would be in favor tonight of approving the action item as is.
Darren, does that sound reasonable in terms of the commission would have opportunities to checkpoint things along the way and make this recommendation in the future if this seems to be something appropriate?
Yeah, there's two things I can maybe share on this chair that might be helpful. Two obvious steps where parking would again be options for this commission and others to weigh in on would be the park improvement ordinance, which would be necessary before we could do anything with the skate park. So that would come back to you when they have a conceptual design for you to look at, review, and comment on. That would be one option. Another is it'll have to go through an architectural review board review, and they will certainly be looking at that. And then the third is the planning staff themselves also factor in parking when they look at that and analyze the project in its conceptual state.
So based on but if parking limitations were identified, staff might recommend to reduce the potential size and the number of people that would use the skate park.
It's hard for me to say. I don't know what different options planning might come up with, or it's hard to say.
Yeah, it seems difficult to be trying to meter the number of people using the facility at a given time. Okay. Any other comments on this? Would someone like to make a motion? We have an action in front of us this evening, and so we do need to make a motion. And Darren has is sharing a motion recommendation, which we're looking at. And if someone wanted to make a motion, that could be the basis for the motion with some changes, or the exact motion.
I move to recommend the project as stated.
Thank you. Do we have a second for the motion? Commissioner Cribbs has seconded. Vice Chair, would you like to speak to your motion?
I don't have many additional comments other than what I've said the last couple of meetings of wanting to see this project through and get it started and allow fundraising to begin and a plan to come to fruition that we can provide feedback for our community. So for me, it's something that I feel like we have a real opportunity to move something along and would like to see it go forward.
Thank you. And as the seconder of the motion, Ann? Your mic, please.
I agree with everything that Vice Chair Lemare said. I'd like to see us move this along pretty quickly.
Great, thank you. Do any other commissioners have comments or questions before we go to a vote? I just want to say thank you to the ad hoc and the community stakeholders for all their work on this. This has been a pretty swift action to get to where we are on this. And as Vice Chair noted earlier, it's great to see the useful members of our community engaged and working on a project that's passionate to them and working in a productive manner with staff and the commission. And I look forward to supporting this and seeing this come to fruition. Lon, could you please take a roll call vote?
Yes, I will. This is for approval of the skate park recommendation. Chair Greenfield,
Yes.
Vice Chair Lemare,
Yes.
Commissioner Cribs,
Yes.
Commissioner Oche,
Yes, please.
Commissioner Freeman,
Yes.
Commissioner Kleinhaus.
Yes.
Chair, that's a 6-0 vote for those present.
Thank you. That's great. The next item will be the Utilities Department update on projects in foothills and Arrested Arrow Preserves.
Yes. Good evening, everyone. My name is Ramandeep. I'm going to share my presentation with you. Oh, gosh.
Sorry.
Yeah, hang on just a second. Now, Chair, it's my pleasure to introduce Ramandeep Kaur. She's a senior electrical engineer with the Utilities Department. Ramandeep, thank you so much for being here tonight.
Yes, welcome. Thank you.
Thank you. Can everyone hear me properly? Hello?
And Ramandeep, if you're speaking, we can't hear you yet.
All right. Hello? Hello? Hello?
And Ramandeep, we see your home screen, but not your shared PowerPoint and no audio.
I don't know. Hello?
All right. We can see your PowerPoint now.
I'm not sure why you can't hear me. Hello? Hello?
I can hear you, Raman.
Oh, yeah, you can hear me now?
Yeah, I can hear you. Don't think the.
Is there a
rest
reason
of
why
the
they-
folks.
Oh, I don't know why they can't hear me.
I can hear audio at a very low level.
Yeah, are you, okay, I thought,
Very low level.
yeah.
And I can see that Ramandeep has two different logins to Zoom. I don't know if one would work better than the other.
Okay, I'm gonna try one. I'm sorry, I don't know why it's not working. Can we move to the next item? I'm gonna try to log off and log in.
Ramandeep, how about if you join the meeting via member of the public, I will then change your status to panelist and see if that process will work instead.
If we're not able to sort this out, we might want to swap the order of the agenda items back and then get back to this.
Ramandeep has just relogged back in. Let's, if we could try one more time, Chair.
You're muted right now, Ramandeep.
Okay, can you guys hear me now?
Can't hear you.
Can you hear me now?
It's just so faintly for some reason.
Hello? I'm sorry, I don't know. This worked fine before. Can you hear me now?
Yeah, unfortunately, we can't hear you.
Hello?
Hmm.
Can you guys hear me now?
Yeah, it's just no audio.
So the issue may be the sound that we're hearing here.
Is it logged in twice?
Raman, we have two people logged in under that link. Tom Marshall and myself.
Oh.
So I don't know if that's causing the problem.
Okay, maybe if you need to log off.
No. We can log off, but I think it's a problem on their end because I can hear you fine.
I can hear you too, Raman.
Okay.
Yeah, on TV on the line, that sounds perfect.
Hey, Tom, Marshall, would you mind checking your mic just to see if there's something else going on with ours?
Yeah, so it's your end, I think. I can hear
Yeah, we
fine.
can't hear you either. Okay.
Yeah.
So it's not Ramandeep's system, it's something maybe with ours.
Yeah. Just go right now.
I see.
So is there a way for someone to connect to the meeting via Zoom and play audio out of their laptop without getting feedback loop?
Something's not set on here or somewhere. There's a level that's down to.
Should we consider maybe moving
Yeah,
items and come back to this one?
yeah, let's go to let's change the order of these items.
I'm really sorry, Ramandeep. For some reason, we've got an error on our side and we can't hear you or Tom. Maybe while we try to work on this, we can move to our other agenda item. Again, my sincere apologies.
No problem.
Oh, could you test your vocal one more time?
Can you hear me? Hello? Test. Let me try calling in. Maybe that would help. Does that help?
Yeah, unfortunately, we're still not hearing you.
Okay. We can move on to the next item.
Okay, let's walk. Let's move on to the funding opportunities ad hoc update, and I'm also concerned how we're going to be able to address this issue even afterwards, even with some time. I don't know if that's something you'll be able to work on, Tom, or there's someone else another staff member that you might be able to engage for assistance. We'll now move to the funding opportunities ad hoc update.
Chair, we'll be checking with some other staff if we can get some assistance from our IT department on call. Perhaps we could move on with the next agenda item while we work on resolving that. This meeting? No, she is, but she. Okay, we're checking. Okay. Darren, can you follow through the Zoom follow?
Yes, in that meeting invite, there is a phone number.
So we're going to have the ad hoc present on this item.
Yeah, when we proceed with the ad hoc, then
Please.
we'll work on resolving this.
So we'll look for the ad hoc to present now, please.
Thank you, Chair. Commissioner Krivs and Commissioner Oche and myself have met a few times in regards to the fundraising, funding opportunities ad hoc. And it's an ad hoc that's been around for a long time. And, obviously we are trying to get away from having ad hocs go year to year. So we anticipate this being the last of the funding opportunities ad hoc, and really view this as an opportunity to have a discussion as it is an agendized item. And hopefully there's some commissioners with some different ideas, and we can all talk about or provide some insight into what you think based on some of the stuff that we talk about, what we can do. But one of the biggest things for us is having the community know that they can get involved, having the community know that there's opportunities for them to donate to projects. And whether it's a big projects like we've seen, the Junior Museum and Zoo or Magical Bridge Playground, but the friends of groups are so important with this. And I think it's very timely that we're on this subject when we just talked about the skate park. And the skate park is going to need a lot of fundraising, and it's going to go through a Friends of organization. But it's just an example of ways that there's opportunities for targeted giving. We've seen that with dog parks. We've seen that there's some other examples that we've listed and that have occurred. But the real big thing that we want to get across with this is having the community understand that there's opportunities for them to have targeted giving. And I think that's very, very important for them to understand that if someone is giving money as opposed to it going to a general fund, that it can go to something that is important to them. And that's where our friends of organizations and this discussion is extremely important. As we know and as we hear, there's plenty of shortfalls for funding, whether it's the fields, for example. We need improvement with our fields, all of our fields, and so there's different areas that we can identify, and different areas the public can identify and bring to our attention, and we can try to get things approved to, the city staff can help try to get things approved where something can appear on the Friends of website and we can get fundraising started. But I would like to turn it over to Ann to speak a bit more on some of these projects and some other information for you guys.
Thank you very much. We've been at this for a long time. I think this is the third ad hoc I've participated in, and I think we've come up with every year some really good ideas. I think it's always been, we live in a great community. We do have a lot of resources, and we know that people would like to contribute in an easy way. It's not close to me. Thank you. We believe that people would like to contribute to specific projects that they have identified or the city has identified. And this is really just what we think is going to be important to the group. For me, it was really important that all the commissioners have an opportunity to share their thoughts about fundraising and opportunities and making it easy for the community. I think Jeff has said it really, really well. People don't like to contribute to the general fund necessarily, but they do like to contribute to their pet project. And even tonight, talking about the soccer fields, I had a sense that the soccer community, if they had a specific objective, would open their pocketbooks and help support the community that way. So I'm just going to talk a little bit about fundraising communication. What we wanted to do is, now that the website is moving along, the city's website's looking really good. We wanted to create a special page in community services that would invite the community to participate and to contribute. We'd like to put cost-effective resources to spread the word, both paid and pro bono, that are available within the city. And when I'm talking about that, I'm talking about particular ads, perhaps in the Enjoy catalog. I'm talking about something on the web page, going to the Palo Alto Weekly and to the Palo Alto Post and asking for a reduced rate for paid advertising to publicize some of the projects that are going on. I think it's really important to clarify and publicize how community members can contribute toward approved projects. And we're very lucky to have two organizations within community services, both the Palo Alto Recreation Foundation and the Friends of the Palo Alto Parks, to be able to support community services and specific programs, but also to hold money, have events, and all of that. So I'm hopeful that the city will allow us to put information both about the Friends of the Parks and the Palo Alto Recreation Foundation, a little history of each organization, how it got started, who's involved, and a link and some of the specific projects they're working on, because I almost bet that many in our community don't know that the Palo Alto Recreation Foundation funds things like helping Mayfay, some of the Martin Luther King activities, some of the chili cook-off, and now the 4th of July activities and the music festival. And I think maybe people don't know that they can go to the Friends of the Parks and put money in the track or the pickleball club or the dog parks. And I think that both those organizations are so important and so valuable. And I think it would be really nice if we could organize this particular web page. On that web page also, I would do a short paragraph about some of the success stories that have been going on lately, like the Cubberley track, the pickleball lines on the courts, and something about the dog parks. So if you look on the first page, and I don't know whether we can get it up, Lum, right now. So if you go to the city's community services and there's like 6 squares to click on. Can you go to, get us to the city's website?
Let me give you a chance here. Some more.
Community
And this is the
services.
Community Services homepage. Are you referring to the Community Services homepage?
I'm looking at the, you know what, never mind, it's okay. Yeah, I think we can just explain it, but on that particular page, I'd like to see the Recreation Foundation, the Friends of the Parks, and then volunteer opportunities that can be used to support community services. New projects that are announced at commission meetings or in the public some other way. And then I talked about the recent success stories. I'd also like to be able to list education about other funding sources. In the Park Master Plan, we did a pretty good job of listing all of the ways that community services has supported the general fund, the parkland dedication fees, the developmental impact fees, the grants of public-private partnerships, and particular donations. And then wrap it up with just a general statement about the support that Palo Alto as a community has done. There we go. That's exactly what I wanted. Thank you very much. So if you look at those blocks there that have activities and classes, requested tea time, children's theater, Palo Alto Junior Museum, facility rental, it would be great to have one that is talks about funding and volunteer projects. Do you think that we could find space for that, Darren? To put you on the spot?
Yes, I'm confident we can find a spot. I'm not sure it'd be necessarily on this page, but I'm confident we can work on developing a page.
So this is all about the details now, but I
Yeah.
just wanted to talk a little bit about the concept and see if
Yeah.
other commissioners had ideas that they would like to see on the website. And then in addition, look at the kinds of resources that are free that we have in the city that we could utilize. Darren and I had a conversation about the Enjoy catalog and the opportunities to put a page in the Enjoy catalog as well, if that would cost community services or the Friends of the Parks or the Recreation Foundation funds, or if it would be provided. So I think we'll get more information about that. So I'd love to, before we leave this, I know Joy is going to talk about grants and the grant project, but would it be good to stop here and get some conversation going, or do you want to go right to the grant project? Maybe we should do that, Joy.
I think if Darren could clarify the last question you just asked regarding not the volunteer opportunities, but
Was it the Enjoy catalog?
Enjoy catalog.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Commissioner Cribbs had just reached out to me with that, and I did connect with rec staff that helps manage the Enjoy catalog process. I think it has great potential to be able to add a page on a regular basis, and they do get mailed out to all Palo Alto residents. We do that 4 times a year.
That would be great.
Yeah.
If we could do that, because I think what that would do is to help us build our list of people who want to know about recreation. All the recreation projects have their own specific stakeholders, but I'm not so sure that we have a comprehensive list of everybody who has an interest in recreation.
Yeah.
Then the one other one that I would mention is the utility flyer. And I know it's hard to get in that utility flyer, but it gets mailed to everybody and everybody pays attention to their utility bill, or should.
I will note that's when we do have to pay for when we want things into the utility flyer.
So we pay for utility?
Yeah, I probably wouldn't, if it's fundraising for CSD in the Enjoy, we could do that for free, but for the utility flyer, we'd likely have to pay.
Well, the Enjoy is probably more appropriate anyhow.
Yeah.
I was looking just for other opportunities that I
Yeah.
thought might be free. So, Chair, I think it'd be good to, get other people's opinions about that. So the question is, do we go to Joy and the grants or do we stay on this one?
I'll leave that to you, whatever you.
Okay, so let's go to Joy and the grants. So we want to make sure we get something about grants in this discussion. Joy?
Yeah, thank you, Commissioner Krebs. I just want to appreciate all the work that has gone in with the previous ad hoc, committee for funding opportunities. We all know how grant writing and applications can be really, really time consuming and highly competitive. And when we had a discussion, we believe that it would be very useful for us to consider, the services of a professional grant writer. And we're hoping that we can discuss that now because we all know how much work the city staff works, their heavy workload, and we're hoping that we could get, someone who has professional expertise that will help streamline our efforts and help us to be able to, because I know there are a lot of grants around. I just did a little research and I was able to find one for skate parks, which was really exciting. I was really excited when I found that. I'm hoping that we can, consider that because I believe that getting a grant writer, even though it's, going to be a little bit of cost, might outweigh the benefits that we'll get from getting the grant itself. So I'm going to open it up to other commissioners to see what our thoughts are and to see how effective we can go in the right direction of getting a grant writer. Thank you.
Thank you. Would other commissioners like to comment? And thank you for the presentation. These are ideas we've been talking about for a while, I think, and I look forward to figuring out how we can get these physically on the website and get something substantive in place. I think we do have a buy-in from staff to move forward with this, and so I think we're a little bit beyond the point of asking staff for permission for this. I think they're fully on board with this. But let's go ahead and hear from the other commissioners. Commissioner Kleinhaus.
So there are two issues we've discussed. One is how to make this available to the public, and the other one is the grants. And generally, I think they're both good ideas, but I'm a little concerned about a couple of things. One is that there's definitely a tension between asking people to donate money to something that they want, and then, the parks become kind of for sale. Pieces of them go to different groups that have the ability to raise money. And we've seen it happening already with pickleball, with the dog. Basically, we're losing the space to piece by piece to interest groups. I don't know that it's necessarily a problem as long as all the options are there and we do not pre-select very limited options. And I think that in this document, the options are limited. And I would add at least 5 other things that could potentially be very, very important to our park system, don't have money right now, could use funding. The other thing is that we delegate the stewardship of our land to nonprofits that don't have the capacity to do it. So they have to fundraise for that. But should we be doing any of that as well? Like, do we need to fundraise to have more eyes on our parks? And because, we have problems retaining or even hiring rangers sometimes and other things like that. We want a naturalist in the park. That would be absolutely fabulous for all the people that want to learn about nature, and we don't have that resource. And there's other things like the ITT property, the 7.7 acres in Foothills Park. There's a lot of other things that I would like to see. So how do you select? And I have some ideas, but I'm not there yet. So how do we utilize and support nonprofits that are doing some of the work? And how do we supplement it with our own work? And how do we give enough of a palette so we don't really get our parks given to people that have the ability to raise money? And that has been happening already. The other thing that I think is important, just to, as a comment on the grant writer, I'm supportive of that. I think we should, but the cost is not only the cost of how much we pay this person. The cost is a lot of stuff done. And so we need to recognize that, because the grant writer can identify the grants and what is required. But to write the grants, they need a lot of input from staff. And we need to consider that, because it can be a lot. So these are two comments. I had a lot of more specific comments on different projects. Some of them are in the parks master plan. There was something about in the parks master plan about, where was that one? To renovate the exhibits in all our nature centers and have new interactive ones. I mean, this is another project we could fundraise for. Having, doing the restoration that is needed in the 7 point, I know there are some plans, initial plans for restoration of the 7.7 acres. What about the big project that we wanted to have in Foothills Park that would create a better flooding, all that project? That's now 10 years, maybe less, but many, many years. And the good news is that now there's a lot of grant funding for those type of projects. There is more and more available for sea level rise, for rewilding, for biological improvements. And we need to consider those. So, you know, when we look at, when I look at the 4 initiatives, I think that the first one is important, but we need to be careful at what are the options that we are providing with people, to people. And often, you know, it's whoever is able to fundraise, the skate park, family recreation center, and grants. But I think we need to add a lot more than just 2 and 3 here, the skate park and the family recreation center. There should be other things involved. And many of them are really in desperate need of money. And one of the things that I remember from the Parks Master Plan stakeholder groups is that there are a lot of people who, nature was number one. It was more than any other specific use. And it's not only in Palo Alto, it's true for Cupertino, it's true for San Jose, it's true for any city that has done that kind of survey. What do you want most? And so perhaps what we need is another survey at this time, like give people a few options, maybe not everything that I can think of, but some, and do a survey and see what people respond to. Because it may not be the same as the people with money. Maybe the people who want something are not the people who can fund it, but at least we will know. So I don't know if that's something you want to consider. It's something I was thinking of. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Freeman.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, this is definitely a very worthwhile project. I think it's something that needs to really be managed well. People also have money to donate, but I think people also have time and expertise to donate. So we should be looking for people who are willing to donate. Someone who might be passionate about architecture and design and that type of thing. They give them an opportunity to maybe they can't make a hefty money donation, but they can donate their expertise in the area that might be funded. I think the other thing is to give people the opportunity to kind of this might go back to what you're just talking about as far as survey, to say some of the things that they would be interested in seeing. And that kind of gives us an opportunity to make sure that the funding is headed in that direction. And people might also be concerned about fundraising and seeing money that's being contributed, donated by the stakeholders, and wanting to know, okay, and whether or not we're going to publicize that amount, right? Because publicizing it says that, oh, we've got all this money in this pot, why is this not moving? Why are we not doing anything about this when we have the funding for it? Why can't we take that fund and apply it to something else? Well, why to donate it to this fund because I'm passionate about it. So I think we have to be, that's where you come back to managing it and in a way that, in a way that people see that there's some possible movement on their end. The other side of it is, we put all these things out there and have projects that are going to be donated to, but staff has to support it. So you have to understand what the priorities are going to be for those particular things. So I think those are the big things to be concerned about, is making sure that we manage the expectations of what people are looking at. But I think having a vehicle, I know I've had people ask, how can I get back to the city? Not necessarily wanting to be involved on a commission or be a member of the city council, whatever it might be, but to be able, I think, people love living here. And there are people who want to be able to provide, to show that they're supporting what's happening in the city. So I think this gives them a real opportunity to do that, but we have to make sure it's managed well. So that's kind of my 2 cents on that.
Thank you. Go ahead, you have a question?
Who would be managing it then? Oh. Who would manage this?
Yeah, that's a good question. But it is something that has to be factored into this whole project as well.
It's interesting when we think about this. When we started this 3 or 4 years ago, talking about fundraising, what we could do, people were like, well, we could do this, we could do that, we could do this, we could do that. And there were a plethora of ideas and comments. And then COVID came along, and so we didn't get to do anything. And so it's great that the chair has said, okay, you guys need to focus and pay attention. So we focused on the website and focused on things that the community could do that was easy for them to contribute money. And I think that's sort of where we've gotten to now. I'm pleased to at least have had this conversation. And I think that there's a great website that I direct everybody to. It's the San Francisco Parks Alliance, which is the nonprofit arm of the San Francisco Parks. And they've done some really big things like the Golden Tennis Center, but they've done some really little things too. And one of the things that they do is have a park cleanup day in one of the parks and invite the neighborhood and bring the food trucks in, and everybody gets together and cleans up the parks and then has a great community time together. And I think that that's really important, to build community in a community, especially when things are changing. And I would love to see us do something like that. I'd love to see us give everybody a garbage can when they set a garbage bag when they set their foot on a park, and say, okay, you clean it up and take it with you. So just a lot of things that can be done that become a part of the culture of the community. I have a lot of faith in the people in Palo Alto. There's some wonderful, wonderful people and a great community here and great facilities. And it's really, I think, an honor to be able to think about ways that we can continue to improve.
Thank you. Comment I'd like to make is the master plan is an aspirational document. It has lots of great ideas, and funding is a key shortfall in making a lot of these plans come into reality. Staff resources are a concern and an issue as well, and in some cases are more significant than a lack of funding. But essentially, the master plan has a list of many competing equivalent priorities, and funding tends to be the factor that bumps up the priority for something. And I think we saw exactly that on the skate park earlier this evening. When we're asked by City Council to prioritize the funding for skate park, it's a high priority. There are many other high priorities that are equivalent to the skate park, but they didn't have the funding and initiative and resources behind them to get some inertia to move forward with it. And I think there's legitimate concerns that are brought up in terms of making sure that we're aware of how dollars are speaking in the community and driving priorities. And to the extent that we are able to open up the list of possibilities beyond exactly where the dollars are, that's important. I'm not exactly sure how we do that because it gets back to the funding is one of the two resource shortcomings along with staff time. So I think it's reasonable to put together a list of things and potential projects. I think something like Buckeye Creek and the project plan would be useful to stick on a website page so people can see that this is a potential project for the city. That's unfunded, and if somebody gets really inspired, then an effort could come behind it. As a general comment, I think I totally agree that targeting giving is very important as far as being a motivating force for community members to contribute to a project that appeals to them as opposed to putting money into the general fund and being able to donate to specific projects. My question is how, and I would really like to see some very specific lists, details, information available for staff to work into putting things on a web page. I don't think deciding exactly where on the website it goes is our role. I think the commission needs to have very specific lists of content to post on the website, and talking about it is one thing, but I don't think it's reasonable to talk about it with staff and say we'd like to do this without handing them a specific list. I mean, this can be including, the Palo Alto Recreation Foundation and the Friends of Palo Alto Parks, the write-ups, a specific copy that's going to go there, any specific photos we'd like to include, any specific contact information in terms of volunteer opportunities, a specific list of volunteer opportunities that could be included. I think including somewhere all of the environmental partner organizations that we work with is important to include. That there used to be a page that listed these partners on the old website. I haven't found any page on the new website that includes a similar listing of all of the environmental partners. And so I think that's very important. That might be something that the staff could look into on their own to try to include to restore something similar on the existing website that is no longer present.
Chair, I'm glad you mentioned that because I believe we have that someplace that's in one of the original ad hoc reports. Because we did that summary
Exactly.
of how many ways there are to give to the city and how many environmental groups, how many theater groups, how many on and on and on. So that's around.
Right. The information is there. And so I guess it would be helpful to get some direction from staff on how to proceed with this. We need to move beyond hand waving, and we need to get down to the brass tacks. And I think it would be helpful to hear from staff tonight to the extent possible, and future follow-up, what specific details you need from the commission for that might be something the ad hoc continues working on. I don't know that there will be another agenda opportunity for this ad hoc to come back this year. We've got a lot coming on our plate, but that doesn't mean we can't continue working on this.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. I think we can be productive having meetings with the ad hoc and staff, sitting down together at a table. We've done it so many times with different projects, whether it be dog parks or whatever, poring over maps in the case of dog parks to find the right location and work through details or rules, for updating that. So it's worked in the past. I think it can work in this one. It's just sitting down together and doing the hard work of saying, what exactly do we want on this and penciling it out,
looking at great examples like the SF Alliance page that you mentioned, Commissioner Cribbs, as templates perhaps to borrow from. Staff would take that and then meet with additional staff from different parts of the department and work through what's possible and go from there. So yes, I think it is doable. Yes, I think we can do it just with ad hoc and staff. It's just going to take a little staff time. Perhaps that's been the impediment to making advancements in the past is you need some staff person who sits down together with the team and hashes it out, and it takes hours. Right now, I think we're kind of in the same place we've always been in. We're really stretched thin, and it's a little complicated and hard to free time to work on that. I've got so many competing priorities right now. It's difficult, but it's such a worthwhile endeavor, and it is so important. I've for years, my entire career, heard you're leaving so much money on the table by not taking advantage of this community's interest in supporting open space parks and natural environment and recreation. And we just haven't had the staff capacity to really delve into it. I think we can make time.
I appreciate the staff limitation. I guess I would encourage staff when meeting with the ad hoc to delegate as much specific responsibility to the ad hoc within specific tasks, with what you need to move forward. And I think the ad hoc can probably meet without staff on some occasions to try to make progress on specific tasks that staff's able to itemize and then sync back with staff. But I know the ad hoc is cognizant of staff's time, and will do their best to limit the time that they pull you into meetings. And working electronically, just passing emails back and forth can help move things forward without actually meeting.
Yeah.
And I just want to comment on grant writing. This is not a new subject that's come up. I think it's easy for the commission to sit here and talk about the benefit of a grant writer and the overall cost benefit. Yes, there's going to be expense involved with a grant writer, but someone will more than pay for themselves. But another commissioner made the good point that there is still a lot of staff time required to support the grant writer. And I think essentially that's been one of the main factors that's continually shot down this idea. And I think it's been frustrating to the commission and who's looked at this through a little bit different lens. And so I'm wondering, is anything different here? We've talked about this many times before. Is there a path towards actually seeing us being able to move forward with a grant writer? Is there some other groups within the city that we need to engage with? What are we missing here that's needed to make this happen?
Yeah, I don't think you are. I think it's an excellent idea. I would recommend, and I think the commission's maybe hinted at this, but it wouldn't just be broad, apply for anything that's out there. It would be very targeted, where we would use contract dollars to reach out to a consultant that does grant writing for municipalities, has insurance, and has done this kind of thing before. And staff's already invested in a given project. Let's take something like 7.7 acres, where we've put together a draft plan. There's still lots of review that has to happen with that, but we've got movement on it. Or Buckeye Creek, where there's an entire hydrology plan with recommendations and costs associated with it. That's the kind of thing where you could hire a grant writer and have it be really focused and pointed. I think we probably have some dollars in contract accounts that we could move towards that. It's really having a direction from both council, maybe input from the commission, staff availability for a given project to move forward. And that's the right sort of scenario or conditions where it makes a lot of sense to staff to say, let's put $15,000, $20,000 to a grant writer and have them apply for everything that fits under this project.
So it's not so much finding a spot for a staff grant writer, which is probably out of the cards for the start. It's wait till we have existing projects and identify that a grant writer, that there are grants available on this, and then reach out.
Yes.
And get assistance from a contract grant writer.
That's just my perspective. I haven't vetted that with other CSD staff, but
It sounds like a good start to me, considering that we haven't gotten past the starting line so far on the concept. And I think, I agree, it's not realistic to jump straight to adding a head count. There's lots of competing priorities for that, I'm certain. Okay, further comments from anyone? Well, thank you very much to Jeff. You have something?
No, I just want to thank the chair for agendizing this and also appreciate the fact of that Commissioner Kleinhaus and Commissioner Freeman were able to comment on this. And this is what we were looking for, was to get these ideas out there and to hear the different perspectives. And I think this has been tremendous. And so appreciate the opportunity.
Thank you for all your work, and look forward to browsing and seeing something on the website. Any last comments from staff?
none for me.
Thank you. So let's try to move back to the utilities department update, and I think we have some hope for success here.
Hello?
Yes.
Yes.
What a lovely voice to hear.
Thank you so much for your patience,
Yeah,
Ramandeep.
I'm so sorry to keep you waiting on this.
No, I'm just glad that I could do it tonight. Can you see my screen? Can you see my screen?
Starting up. Yeah, it's loading.
Okay.
There we go.
All right. Good evening, everyone. I'm here to talk about the Foothill Rebuild Project. To give you some background on the project, the area circled in yellow is what the California Public Utility Commission, they said this is a tier 2 fire threat area. And so the red line that shows over here is where Palo Alto has overhead electric lines currently. There's so staff did a pilot project to underground these electric lines. They concluded that not only was it cost effective, but it also reduces the fire significantly. This project was approved by council and has already gone through the budgetary process. Staff divided the area into 5 different projects. So while one project is in construction, the next phase is in design. So far, you can see circled in yellow cloud, we completed about 7,500 feet of substructure in the first phase. And in the second phase, which we currently have the trail closures in the park, we completed about 5,000 feet. We still have 3,000 to go. The next steps for this project is to eliminate 72 poles in these 2 areas and remove the high voltage cable. This should all be done by August 2023. All 5 phases should be completed by August 2025. Currently, we're using a staging area that was part of an existing project. Once we are done with it, we will restore it based on recommendations from our ecologist. Some of the recommendations that other contractors in the same area have used is they were required to cover with weed-free straw, and then we will also provide a budget for grassroot ecology for their yearly monitoring and documentation. This project is exempt from secret review under the Article 15302.d. It's a conversion of overhead electric lines to underground. Because it's a sensitive area, we decided to bore conduits instead of doing an open trench. Most of our construction is along our utility access road, which is great because if the pole is over here, it's about 110 feet or 120 feet from the utility access road. We are moving this electrical line to the access road. Not is it only good for the habitat, but also for our crews for access. We are also putting electric boxes and pad mount equipment. The pad mount equipment that we are placing, we did get input of the Parks Department. Currently, there is existing pad mount equipment in the park also. So as the Rastro Trail, as indicated in the red line, will be closed until October 15th, fully closed. Once after October 15th, we will still need to install some boxes. We will do partial closures with flaggers to direct traffic. There is still going to be future closures in the rest of this area when we remove the overhead poles and electric wires. Also, just for the whole, the 9.3 miles, we're going to see a couple of electric shutoffs that will be scheduled to cut over the new underground system. Just to conclude, some of the benefit of undergrounding electrical lines is it reduces fire risks, minimizes annual tree trimming, improves aesthetics, and improves animal welfare. And I'll be happy to answer any questions that you might have.
Thank you for the presentation. It's great to get some information on something that we've been seeing going on and knowing something's going on, but not really knowing what's going on. Anybody like to start off with questions? Shani.
Thank you. So the project is exempt from CEQA, but not necessarily from other laws, right? The Migratory Bird Treaty Act, Clean Water Act, other federal regulation?
No, so like I said, we are installing on utility access road, so there shouldn't be any, birds or that would be impacted by that.
Well, if you read the Migratory Bird Treaty Act, I think you might find that it could potentially have impacts, and so surveys are probably needed. And related to the Clean Water Act, I think it's an important project. I'm not saying it's not, but I saw some material that was in the creek, and that is like you're not supposed to fill the creeks unless you have a permit for that. And so it seemed like those hay bales or whatever to keep the water from to try and keep erosion did not work very well in some of those staging areas right on the creek. And so I'm wondering if you have any environmentally best methods or something to avoid those type of problems, like a nesting bird survey is needed just if you're disturbing the birds. I'm not saying that the project shouldn't be done, but I think.
Yeah. But I think Darren, correct me if I'm not wrong, are we referring to a different project where there was erosion? Not on this one. I think there's another project going also. It was the tank.
I think you're right. I think it was the water tank replacement project that they had something get into the creek, and the rangers actually found it, quickly said, hey, you need to get this cleaned up and put exclusionary fence along the edge, along with straw wattles. And I believe they did so promptly, but yeah, I believe that was the water tank.
Okay, well, but do you have any guidance as to how to make sure that, that bird surveys are done during the nesting season and that there is no deposits into waterways?
So our plan is to stick to the utility access roads, and there's no birds, so I didn't think we would need a bird unless, yeah, so no, we don't.
Do you have a biologist determine that there is no need for, or is just your impression?
We do access these electrical lines every year, so we've never had, in previous, we've never had any biologist. So yes, it's just my determination. Let me see.
The harm to biological ecosystems come with attrition. A lot of projects that just don't feel, somebody doesn't feel. I think you should have a biologist look at it myself, but that's my
Okay.
comment.
Okay.
Thank you. Who'd like to ask more questions? Ann?
No, excuse me, no, it's good to know about the project. Thank you very much for arranging it. To have no questions.
Dallas?
Yeah, my only question, yeah, sounds like it's definitely the way things should be happening, and that is trying to move as much underground as possible, but at the same time, be aware of what the environmental impact is in doing so. I guess, what's the timing and as to when, I mean, I suppose you remove you go ahead and put the underground wiring with whatever conduits are going to be buried underground, and then start to de-energize the overhead wiring, and then eventually the poles come down. That's all the stuff that's involved.
Yes. So first the substructure is laid, just like you said, substructure is laid, then we put new cabling in, and then we switch everything to the underground system, and then remove the old system.
So you mentioned that the trail would be closed. Is that during the duration, or is it, there's a period of time when it's open and there's time when it's closed? And I guess
No.
would be signage that would alert the public to when those things would be occurring?
Yes, so we do have signage up, and but it is closed for fully until October 15th. We are boring in that area. We're boring along that access road right now. So there's heavy equipment that blocks it. So we have it fully closed.
Okay, thank you.
Just quickly, certainly in general in favor of projects like this, especially with the fire danger. What are some other risk assessments in terms of doing this project? What are some impediments or things that can go wrong? And then what is the lifespan or the maintenance of something like this? And how often does equipment need to re-enter and do maintenance on these type of projects?
Usually the transformers and most equipment will last 50, 75 years. But in terms of inspections, we do have every 3-year cycle that's mandated by California that we inspect our equipment. So that will be inspected still.
And are there any other risks that are identified when projects like this are done in natural areas?
Not that I'm aware of.
Commissioner Archer.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you very much, Ramandeep. Did I get the pronunciation right?
Yes.
Okay. I was going to ask about the project schedule as well, but I believe Commissioner Freeman asked about it. Just want to thank you for updating us about the project, and also to reiterate what Commissioner Lammeh said about risk assessment as well. That would be very, very important for us to make sure it's in place, and also to notify residents and the community that, you know, the project is coming up. And then I think one of your slides mentioned 2025.
Yes.
Did I get that right?
Yes.
Okay, I was just wondering how community will get updates on the project schedule.
So we do have a city website where we post information, and also before we do a cutover, all the residents will be notified. There will be a communication from our communication team, because there'll be shutdowns for their electric power. It's a one line going up there. So there's about 200 plus customers up there. They will all get electric shutdown communication ahead of time. Then they'll get door hangers and flyers, everything.
Okay, thank you.
I do have one additional question.
Thanks. Before that, I want to check and see if there's any members of the public who'd like to speak on this. I know there was a hand raised momentarily. If anyone would like to speak on this, please raise your hand. We'll give you 3 minutes to speak.
I have one additional question.
Okay, I don't see any hands raised. So we'll go back to hearing from the commissioners. Commissioner Furman.
So you mentioned that, so all the lines will be going on the ground. Are there still transformers involved that will be above ground?
Yes, so all the overhead transformers that are on the poles right now, they will be pad mounted.
They'll be what? I'm sorry.
They will be on ground. Yes.
Thank you.
Okay, and I was just a little bit too short on that, and I see that we do have one speaker of the public who will like to talk on this. Lynn Chiapilla, you can have 3 minutes to speak. And Lom, all set?
Hello.
Hi.
Hi. I do have a question. I was involved in a project many years ago when that road went in. And one of the side effects that we didn't expect, the residents didn't expect, was how much it widened that road. And I wonder if all care is being made not to add to the width of that road, that it will be put back together the way it should be, rather than adding another 3 feet or 6 feet to that road width. That was what was the result of a previous project, is it widened the road a lot and it caused some erosion in the process. That's all I have.
Yes, so we are trying not to open trench and bore the conduit so that it shouldn't impact the road width.
Okay, so the road width will not be increased. That's good to hear. But thank you for providing an answer to that. I was going to suggest that would be good information to have. Has everyone spoken already? I think so. I do have a few questions. Would it be possible to put together a table that includes the trail closure plan and have dates listed in kind of an easy to read format? Then they could be projected dates to be subject to change. But something that would be available to be posted on the website, on web pages for both the Pearson Arrastadero Preserve and Foothills Nature Preserve.
Yes, we can do that. And then we can change the dates as if based on what our contractors availability, of course.
And is there a web page for this project?
Yes, on the City of Palo Alto website, there is.
Okay. If staff could have that website link shared with the commission, that would be helpful. And if we can get the trail closure plan posted on that web page, but it'd be very helpful to have trail closure information posted on the web pages for the preserves. And maybe a better approach is just posting which trails are currently closed, and then include a link to the project plan where you can see a list of future trail closures, or the plan for future trail closures in the future. And so I similarly, I presume on the project webpage, there's a list of the 5 phases and the status of the 5 phases. I'm interested in knowing a little more detail, if you could share what the 5 phases are with us, and we'll walk it through just to provide that information.
The 5 phases, it's just we broke down the project into smaller phases, so it's more doable. It is 9.3 miles and we are designing it in-house. So there's no, besides just making it into smaller sections that are manageable, that's the only reason. There's no other difference between phases.
So the 5 phases are the linear sections in sequence where the work is being done. And the first, which phases are included in Arrastadero Preserve, and which phases are at Foothills Nature Preserve?
I'll come back to my. So we have this phase right here, and then this one. So we can call it phase 1 and 2. So these two phases. So this one's in Arrested Reserve, and this is Darren, correct me wrong. This is a little bit more towards up the park. Here's the interruptive center.
I'm sorry, that's what center?
The interruptive the center.
Interpretive
Yes.
center, okay.
Yes, the interruptive center is here, and then yeah, and then it starts from right after 280. We skip first few poles, and that's where it starts.
Okay, so the phase 1 is Arrested Aero Preserve and phase 2 is Foothills Nature Preserve?
Yes.
Okay, and then is there, when you jump to phase 3 of the project, is that section already undergrounded between 2 and 3?
Yes, this section is already underground. It's inside the park area where there's the picnic area, interruptive center, and the bathrooms. That part already has been undergrounded.
Okay. And so the phase 2 in Foothills Nature Preserve is this the high power lines that you see going up a hillside somewhere? I mean, I know there are some power lines going through the preserve. So will this project be undergrounding all power lines in the preserve?
Yes, all in the preserve.
And do you have a map that shows this in finer detail? So we can see a little more clearly which areas of the preserve are being impacted?
Yes, I don't have it with me. I mean, if you're trying to look to see where the poles are, but I could pull it up on Google Maps. Just try to pull it up on Google Maps real quick. So currently, this is the back of the golf course. So currently there's an electric line. Do you know about where we are?
Yeah, if you could just move to the section at Foothills Nature Preserve, that would be fine.
Okay. So this is where we end. This is so basically it's this loop that we're going around with overhead electric lines, and then it ends right here where everything goes underground. So is this part of the nature preserve right here? So it'll be just up, this is where we end.
So so Darren, are you clear? Are there because I thought there were some high power lines running through the park. These don't through the Foothills Nature Preserve, and these don't seem to be included.
No, so from here, everything is underground.
Is this phase 1 that you're talking about?
This is phase 2. This is the phase we're working on right now. Everything from here, all the way around here, interruptive center, there's the part, there's everything down towards going Oak Grove, everything going towards the entrance to Foothill Nature Preserve is all has been undergrounded already. There's no power lines, there's no poles. So I think I misunderstood. I didn't know how far Foothill Nature Preserve comes, but our electric lines end right here on the top so far. Everything in this area has been already undergrounded.
So phase one and phase two are in,
Above this,
are in Restadero Preserve
they're in the, so-
primarily, if not entirely.
yeah. So they're all up here. Just follows the creek loop.
On the project webpage, is there a map of the power lines? And
I can definitely add those in. I have it.
Roman Deep, while you've got the aerial up, I believe when you get to Toll Camp area, we talked a little bit in another meeting where as you go up that steep hill, that's inside Foothills Nature Preserve too. And I believe there's some pole work that you'll do there as well. Is that right?
Yes, we have not designed this phase yet. So we don't have a design for this phase. So I don't know too much about it, but eventually it will come.
Would that be called phase 3?
Yes, it'll be called phase 3.
I see.
so phase three would, so has phase three been designed? So it was a bubble that was towards,
Phase 3 has not been designed yet.
okay. But thank you, Darren. Those are the power lines that I had in mind.
Oh, you were referring to these ones. Yeah, up to Towel Campground, everything's been underground, and then it goes uphill up to the, I believe this is one of the water pump sites, the water reservoirs up here. So, yeah.
Right. Okay, thank you. And the funding for this are there any outside grants that are assisting with funding, or is this all coming out of the city's general fund?
It's the city's capital improvement. I think it's the electric fund.
Electric fund. Thank you. Does anyone else have any further questions? Well, thank you very much for providing this information to us. It's a very, very enlightening for me, and I think the entire commission. It certainly is an important project to mitigate the fire risks, and it's great to have a deeper understanding what's going on, and look forward to hearing further updates on this as the project moves along. Thank you.
Thank you so much for your input.
Okay, we will now move on. Next up is the ad hoc committee and liaison report updates. This was moved to the end of the agenda tonight to make sure that we would get through everything in a reasonable fashion. And if it got too late, then this section of the meeting might get abbreviated some. But we're doing pretty well.
Yeah.
Nice work, everyone. Does anyone have any updates they'd like to share?
I have a swimming update.
Please.
Based on your comment last month. So Tim sent me a snapshot of the numbers for the end of the summer. It actually looks pretty good. So can I just read this? 410 monthly lap swim members and 1,100 lap swim visits a week. 2,000 open swim visits this summer. Excuse me, 20,000. 60 masters members, which is great because they're gaining steam there, and that's really good. 3,000 youth swimming lessons within the summer camps, and 600 youth summer swim lessons. And I think, Chair, that's what you asked last time about how many kids were taking, how many swim lessons.
Yeah, that's great.
So I think it's good. Yeah,
Thank you.
you're welcome.
Other updates? From ad hocs? Shawnee, you want to give an update on the park dedication? Would you mic on, please?
We went to with staff to look at the 10 acres site of Measure E on Bixby and the potential to rededicate that parcel. We heard from staff various ideas that they had for potentially rededicating the hillside, but not the flat area. The reason they were considering not rededicating the flat area, which is about half of 10 acres, was that they felt that eventually the city may want to use some of that land to provide some kind of water purification facility, and that they would have to go to the voters for that, and it would be potentially easier to convince voters to give up that land if it was not dedicated than if it was dedicated. We just had a discussion of that, and essentially it's not clear why they think that if you have to go to a vote anyway, then you have to go to a vote anyway. So why not rededicate everything? Meanwhile, the site is really kept at there is a facility there that the city is using for monitoring the leachates and the functionality according to all the rules and regulation of the landfill. And so that facility will probably not be moved from there. It's associated with the landfill and it's used for that purpose. But there is still quite a large parcel there that could be rededicated, and that we need to discuss and make recommendations what to do with that. We looked at some of the other areas around where they're potentially going to build some facilities we looked at where they're going to do the desalination plant and remove a lot of trees there. And there's another project also having to do with cleaning water that also will remove some trees. So essentially that whole area is becoming the industrial uses of purifying water is becoming more intensive. Jeff, do you have anything to add to this?
I guess I would just add that the staff thought of potentially not rededicating the whole area was one person's thought, and I think not necessarily all the staff was advocating for that. And this is, we're prefacing something I think will probably come to the commission next month with more details on this. I think it would be helpful for everyone to find a way to get out to see the area there. And I think there was an offer to make some site visits available to other commissioners. Is that something that we can work to schedule in before the next commission meeting? I think if we're discussing this, would be important for the commissioners to be able to see the area. And beyond that, I think we can talk about it further next month. But thank you for the summary. We did, the ad hoc did meet separately before the site visit to talk about things and how to move this forward.
Yeah, there is a long list of potential dedication sites that was provided by Enid Pearson. And there is also a letter that we received from a neighborhood that was suggesting that we look at one site as a potential. It's kind of an island in the traffic, but they think that could potentially be a park. So we should probably add that to our list and see if that makes any sense at all. I don't even know who owns that land.
Sure, but I think for the agenda item coming up,
we'll only focus on the
on
Measure
that.
East site for the next one, yeah.
Any other ad hoc or liaison updates?
I've been out for 2 weeks, but I do know when I left, I think I saw an email regarding the pickleball, which is continuing to grow by leaps and bounds. And so I believe that there's trying to get some survey analysis going on that. And we'll have more follow-up on that at the next meeting.
And I'll add that the e-bikes, or more formally known as the electric conveyances ad hoc, did meet, and we'll be looking to come to the commission perhaps next month with a first phase discussion leading up to an action that we're aiming for by the end of the calendar year. So you already heard about the update, the opportunity to view the Hawthorne's site area. I mentioned that. There are plenty on with respect to the field liaisons efforts and work going on there. And the Coverly restrooms community meeting we already talked about. Anything else anyone would like to add?
I think following on Nellis's racquetball, I think some of us are going to go out and survey some of the participation in the various courts around the city in the next couple of weeks.
Good.
The next couple of weeks.
The next couple of weeks, you have a chance to sign up for different parts.
All right, then let's move on to questions, comments, and announcements and future agenda items. Before we get to future agendas, anyone have any questions, comments, or announcements?
I would only, it's not a question or a comment, it's just this whole situation with the soccer fields. I think it would be great if we could get some information and share it with the soccer community and see if we can all work together to help get this issue solved, because I think it's a big deal.
And Nellis and I are working to meet with staff on this next week to get an update, and something I'm going to suggest is scheduling a meeting with the field stakeholders, the soccer clubs, to talk about what's going on.
That's great. That's really good.
Anything else?
I have a question. We get letters from the public. What happens with that? I mean, people ask questions, have suggestions, they kind of expect some response from somebody, and we don't have those things on our agenda. So what happens to those comments and questions?
So I think this is the opportunity to reference letters and ask staff about questions.
Okay, so specifically, one of that I remember is the question about using on San Antonio Way. The neighborhood there wanted to know if they can, if that area across the street can be a park.
Yeah. I'm in
So-
dialogue with the individual that wrote that letter, checking with real estate to see ownership. I know we own a portion of it. Some of it's public right of way and there are easements. So kind of working through that process to see what's feasible.
Okay, thank you.
Other questions, comments, announcements?
Following on that, I'm sorry. Following on the comment about what happens to the letters and the people, what, if anything, happened with the gentleman who wanted to have a committee about a pool in South Palo Alto?
About?
A pool, a swimming pool in South Palo Alto, because his comment was that Rinconada, based on Tim Sheeper's information, is getting more and more crowded, and he is interested in a pool in South Palo Alto.
I don't know about that. I didn't respond to that one.
No, he was at the last meeting to speak.
Oh, no, then there is no.
So there's no
It's
response.
sharing the thoughts with you, and that's as far as it goes.
Thank you.
Should we move on to talking about next month's agenda?
Sure, Chair, thanks. We've got the racket court policy. Adam Howard intends to bring that. And then we've got a couple question mark ones that I think need a little bit of work, but may be ready. Measure E, park dedication discussion, the electric conveyances or e-bike discussion, and potentially a request I had from Elise DeMarzo, who's the public arts manager, had asked if she could bring a public art discussion to this body for Bulware Park improvement project. So this would be getting feedback about the idea of having public art be part of that project when it goes in to discuss options and hear feedback from you. That one's got some flexibility, but not too much in terms of when they need feedback. So I think the September one would be ideal, she said, but October could probably work.
Okay, so we can, thanks for the clarification. I thought that October was the desired.
I did too. After follow-up, she had explained the desire to go as quickly as possible because they're going to put a call for services out for artists.
And that's great that the commission is getting engaged and asking for comments on public art in the parks. We've requested this and now we're getting it. That's great.
And
Any
then
other-
just to follow up on one that I know we've talked about, it was the advanced water purification system presentation. So they came to you, they talked about it. They had plans to come back soon. And we heard back from staff saying they're having more in-depth discussions with the urban forest about what to do with the trees and need a little more time. So they aren't ready yet. Potentially October is what they told us. And they'll still come back to us and confirm that later.
Thank you. Any comments or suggestions from commissioners regarding the upcoming agendas? Any final comments from anyone?
So, yeah, so with the, keep going back to the soccer, but, so the presentation tonight, probably with the people who had, the stakeholders who come in and express their willingness to go out and do work. How do we communicate back to them as to what, well, to the soccer community as to what sort of the plan is going forward? Because I imagine by tomorrow, there's going to be a whole wrap up of a firestorm as a result of this. So how can we how can we get ahead of that, I guess, from a city perspective? I mean, would that be something we put on the website, or what kind of communications is going to go out on that?
Yeah, it's a good question. We don't have a plan totally in place, right? It's still evolving day by day. One of the core pieces, and many of them are moving concurrently, is getting the vendor in place to do the replacement of the infill. So that's one track that we're trying to expedite. The communication that needs to happen is to make sure we're transparent with the process, the timelines. The problem is right now it all feels so much in the air. I don't have good information to share, which is very frustrating for the users, for you, I'm sure, and the staff. So we're trying to get that piece going. The second is what things can we do in the interim to move forward? What options are there to explore? In my mind, that one's more of a conversation. So I think direct email as opposed to just a website update, although that will be happening too. I think email exchanges with the collective of sort of key representatives from major groups. We've got to start developing that. So we just kicked that off. It was an email just in the morning saying, here's what we're asking you to do for cleaning. Please don't try to clean the North Field. You can do the South one and El Camino. But I think it's got to be more than that. And at some point, kind of a conversation to say, what would that look like on the North Field if it got cooler and we do an inspection? Could we have some league reps with us to look at it? I don't know all the options yet. And there are a lot of other people I need to consult with.
our attorney's office, risk management, all these other departments, the city manager's office, et cetera. So it's kind of a big one, but I think we have to be engaging with them in probably multiple different ways, website, direct communication, probably meeting.
Yeah, I would suggest that there's times when communication needs to be something beyond a email sent out to specific stakeholders and either meeting in person or at least getting on the phone and talking to people is really important sometimes. And yeah, I think this is one of those times and that we missed that opportunity and we need to try to be able to identify needs in the future where that's the right approach to take. And I know Adam being out on vacation right now isn't helping that.
Yeah.
But that's something that I'd like to talk about when we meet next week.
Yeah.
And I think we do have a very strong partner user base here, and they have a lot of resources and they're motivated to help, but we need to figure out how to tap into working with them and find areas of overlap where the city's comfortable with things and we can, where there are synergies and we can work together to meet our goals and communicate more transparently what's going on and when there's cases where we have to do something like shut down Mayfield and more clear explanations on what's going on.
Yeah.
I want to have something else, a positive note. They're working on it. They're I know that some of the groups are moving to some of the open slots at El Camino Field. I know the adult league is there this evening. So that's positive that staff is helping with that. But there's a lot of moving pieces. And thank you to staff for weathering this particular storm. The storm system is still working through and be more to weather. And we want to be here to help as best we can.
Appreciate it very much.
Thank you. With that positive note, I will now call this meeting to a close. Thank you.